he asked me to learn how to run a storage business because he had zero idea how. And within 24 hours, we worked through it and we went under contract. And in less than 45 days later, we had closed. My sole job was to figure out how to run the operations. His sole job was to figure out the bank, and the rest was history. And that relationship grew from 2018 through 2020, where we acquired 4 total storage facilities, one with bank financing, the others with creative financing. And that portfolio today, we bought for a total of less than $6 million, and it's worth over 12 today.
Nobody's born incredible. People who do incredible things simply took the right steps. This is our journey. This is the Hunt for Incredible. Welcome back to another episode of The Hunt for Incredible, where we have my man, Ben Kall. Ben is a former D1 football player and coach who pivoted into real estate in 2016. Since then, he's built a massive investment portfolio. It's on track to be worth $80 million by the end of this year. And he also has over 3,000 self-storage units, which we'll chat about because it brings him in significant passive cash flow. He's in multifamilies. He has triple net leased properties as well, which we'll chat about in detail to break down what that looks like. He's co-founded Legacy Investment Group, where he focuses on deal sourcing, acquisitions, and property management. And he also runs a Legacy Realty Group. And as an agent for that realty group that he owns, he sold over $200 million worth of real estate over the last 5 years. Ben, great to have you on the show, my man.
No, appreciate that. Basically, that says if it's real estate, I've done it in some fashion over the last 10 years.
Yeah, that's it. So to dive in quickly, give us an overview of what your story looked like from going from football, D1 athlete and coach over to owning $80 million worth of real estate.
You know, at the end of the day, the quick summary is it was a lot of mindset shifts and realization that there's more to life than what I had thought was my entire life, which was sports. So all the way from high school through playing college football at Kansas State, I ended up getting hired on to the coaching staff and was a Division I coach and assistant director of recruiting for 4 years. I got married and realized that life is very, very hard for a newly married couple, let alone a family. And I knew that I wanted more. I wanted flexibility. I wanted freedom. I wanted the ability to have lunch with my wife. I wanted to be able to coach my future kids' games. And so I knew I needed to do something different. However, sports was my entire life, and I had zero clue that I was going to become my future entrepreneur self. So ultimately what I did is I moved back home. I became a part-time real estate agent in my hometown because I thought that would be a good holdover job till I find something in sports. Unfortunately, I was backed into the corner because I was married, living in my parents' basement with next to no money to my name. And so when your back's up against the wall, you find this renewed energy to make things work. And so ultimately I went full throttle down into becoming the best real estate agent I possibly could. Over the span of my career, yes, I have sold a lot of real estate. That's been everything from residential to commercial properties, doing leasing and being part of large development teams where we're developing $40 or $50 million apartment buildings. So I cut my teeth in the sales side, but because of that, I also sold properties to investors, which means I then founded, because I was young and dumb and needed money, I founded a third-party property management company. So now I'm cutting my teeth as an operator working on behalf of other people. So I'm doing leasing, I'm doing managing, I'm doing maintenance, like actually maintenance, painting walls, changing garage doors, doing the whole thing. And then finally, one night, about 6 years into that journey, I was plowing snow at 2 a.m. and realized the person I'm working for doesn't even know it's snowing, and he's getting paid and I'm out here grinding at 2 a.m. away from my family again. So that's when I decided I need to become an investor. My very first investment was in 2018. It's now 2025. I am financially free and grown a sizable portfolio that I'm very, very proud of.
So what mindset specifically enabled you to buy the $80 million in real estate?
I think it all started from the beginning with various shifts over a period of time. Being an athlete, in order to play at the Division I level and to be competitive and successful, you always need to want more. You need to want to level up, because when you're playing Division I sports, the second you take your foot off the gas, someone is there to replace you. Like in high school, if you're the captain of your team or an all-state running back, you're the only person on your team that's doing that. At the Division I level, like they have an entire country and a stable of people to come replace you. So I've taken a lot of my sports mentality of never being complacent and always wanting to learn. And I think the biggest thing for me that now that I can step back because I've been doing this for 10 years is curiosity. I am always curious about what is changing at the micro level versus the macro level, how we can improve our business, how I can make my life easier, and how I can get more time back. So, what a lot of that enables me to do is to think bigger and to think easier.
So, if we could break down your journey into phases of development, like entry point into property management, and then maturing it up into being an asset manager, owning these assets yourself with capital raise, etc. If you could take those phases and compress them down to get to where you are more rapidly, what phases would you have broken them down into?
That is a great question that I've really, really, really been searching on recently because I'm going through a major shift right now, personally, because I'm having my first child in January. So
Congrats,
thank
man.
you. No, super exciting. And like that is the why behind everything we have been building since we started to become investors. But ultimately, everything I built out of the beginning was behind a scarcity or a fear based mindset. And so my entire portfolio up until a year ago, it was me, my business partner, and one VA running our entire company, which includes acquisitions, property management, operations, investor relations, reporting, bookkeeping, taxes, everything. Yes, your eyebrows just went up. I agree. So ultimately, we achieved what we achieved to get to about the $60 million mark of acquisitions and assets under management by brute force, willingness to learn, curiosity, and just taking action. Along the way, we had to take these 3-year segments, if I were to kind of answer your question a little bit more directly now, of realizing that there was not enough time in the day or enough coffee in the world to be able to do all of these things. So we went and had a major mindset shift in about 2020 that we needed to start buying properties outside of our 30-mile radius that we had been shopping. Why? Because then I would have to start to learn how to delegate and work with a team to manage properties. So if there was a fire drill, a maintenance issue, I couldn't just run out the door, grab all my tools, grab my truck, and go work on it. If there was a showing request, I just couldn't run to Iowa or Kansas to go do a showing that would take 2 hours of my day. So ultimately, I had to change the way that I was thinking in order to learn how to build a team, how to delegate, and get to the growth that we are today.
That's awesome. Yeah, just to touch on the value of that, there is so much value in being forced to operate through people because there are different levels of entrepreneurship. There's level one, which is just like you're saying, brute force, just grinding it out. And you can get to about $150,000 a year, just brute force hammer hitting. But that's the cap that you can get to. And then the next level is how do you work through people? How do you have VAs, but then also specialists on your team that can push things to the next level. And there you can get up to about $500,000 a year. But then beyond that, it's how do you work through people who work through people? How do you work through people that work through people? And that's a completely different mindset altogether. And it's a completely different skill set also. And the hard part is that our schooling system is designed around teaching you how to just do the brute force work, right? If you're given a plan, how do you execute through that plan? How do you be a cog in the wheel? But we're not taught how to develop the skill of working through people. So rather than hunting deals and analyzing them and raising the capital yourself, how do you work with people who hunt for deals and analyze the capital? And how do you work with people who analyze the deals and negotiate and everything else while you're focused on the raising capital piece? And then leveling it up even further, how do you work with people who have the media dialed in so that they're effectively raising the capital for you through you, and you're running these companies and acquiring these deals through others? So what would you say has been the biggest lesson learned in terms of being able to work through other people to carry out the work?
That is a really hard question. And I don't think that you shouldn't ask yourself that at every single chapter of your career, no matter how small you are or no matter how big you are, because you always need to be thinking about that. Like I was just working with a client through my wife's coaching program. They have a very, very large cleaning company. The second he removed himself from sales, their sales went up 42%. So exactly what you said. As soon as you remove yourself from certain areas, that you're not willing to give up, all of a sudden you will start to get more time back, which gives you more energy, which lets you become the founder and the visionary that is needed to do the next set of a level jump.
That is the number one problem that entrepreneurs make, is being in the trenches and so comfortable being in the trenches and thinking that everything that they're doing is the most important thing, that nobody can do better. When the reality is that thing that you hate doing, somebody else loves doing, and somebody who loves doing it is going to be 10 times better than you at that thing.
Well, for example, I had still about a year ago, and even sometimes when I need to jump in because my team is running short, there's no reason I should drive 20 minutes down the road and show a $650 apartment to a tenant. Like, I am not at that stage of my career where that is something I should be doing on a daily basis. Now, do I think that I need to help my team when there's capacity issues? And do I think I need to still do it from time to time to keep a pulse on the market and as to what's going on? Absolutely. No matter where I'm at today or where I'm going to be in 10 years, I think the biggest thing that holds a lot of people back is that as an owner and someone who's running a team, there is nothing that is beneath me. And when your team starts to think that there are certain jobs that are not worth your time or you're unwilling to do to help teach them, that's where your team starts to fall apart. So there are times where I'll still throw a toolbox in my truck and we'll go do something together because it's a teaching moment. And I can go through my leadership styles of storytelling and explaining why certain things are important. Or we can explain why it's really important to go troubleshoot this issue that we're having ourselves so we can really focus on driving down expenses. So it becomes teaching moments that become implementational, which are something that my team really values, and then I don't have to teach it again. And then all of a sudden I get more time back. And it's also fun to go spend that time in the trenches with a company. Because as someone who's in real estate, I think the way that I'm going to use this analogy is that college sports, right? Not many people love practice, but you only play 15 games a year. So one of the most memorable things my freshman coach said was that college football is 15 days of heaven for 350 days of hell. Right? So practice is hell, game day is heaven. And running an investment firm, specifically in real estate who does property management, it's very, very similar. I don't just get to fly around the country and meet with investors and do podcasts every single day. We are in the trenches working with tenants and collections and maintenance issues and vendors not showing up. That is the bulk of every single day. So we need to figure out how to build a community and turn all of those days that aren't as attractive into fun learning opportunities.
If you are an entrepreneur and you are hanging on to the tasks that you feel are important rather than the tasks that you love, you are the bottleneck to your business. What needs to be done is, if you've identified areas of your business where you don't like doing the work, but you feel it's important, you know that you're the bottleneck because there's somebody else who loves doing that work more, who will do that work 10 times better than you will. And the sooner you realize that, the sooner you can bring somebody in to drive it forward. It's not bad sales. It's not bad marketing. It's not bad operations. It's poor ability to remove that thing that you should not be doing. That was the biggest game changer for me in terms of growing my portfolio and business. Is I was so focused on doing the work that I felt was important, the work that I thought I can't afford to give this up because I can't afford for this not to be done effectively, and therefore it's too high risk. So I'm going to give the work that I enjoy to somebody else, and I'm going to focus on this. And what ended up happening was I was getting burnt out. I didn't like the work, and I was watching somebody else do the work that I love doing. And so once I shifted that perspective to say, okay, this is the important work, but I'm going to give it to somebody who loves it, I saw massive growth and bought so much more of my time back. And I have a 1 month old. She turned 1 month like 2 days ago. So I'm in the exact same boat as you, as being thoughtful of how do I invest my time and making sure that I'm not just buying real estate, but I'm building a company that buys real estate so that I can, take off and this thing will continue moving forward. It's also beautiful to know, you mentioned like with your back up against the wall, shoveling snow, knowing that you didn't want to be out there and it forcing you to think differently. That is a big reason why it's easier to make $1 million than it is to make 100,000. And the reason is you can kind of think of it like the 2 mile principle. Anything that's less than 2 miles away, you're more likely to walk. Anything that's more than 2 miles away, you're more likely to drive. So if something's a mile away, you might take a 20-minute walk to get there. But if it's 3 miles away, you'll hop in your car and get there in 5 minutes. And the same goes for making money. So if the average American makes $5,000 a year, let's say they're super aggressive and they save up $10,000 a year. Wait, no. The average American saves $5,000 a year. Let's say they're extra aggressive and they save up $10,000 a year. It'll take them 10 years to make that $100,000. But if they're going for $1 million, they'll never get there. There's not enough time in their lives. So they're forced to think differently. They're forced to find a different vehicle to actually get to that million. And that looks like finding things that are higher leverage. So building out a team, building robots that can do work for you, leveraging capital like in real estate, where you are increasing the leverage to buy an asset that's growing and appreciating in value. So shifting that mindset of saying, I don't actually want to shovel snow. I would much rather be the guy who owns the asset that's forcing appreciation. That shift in perspective to find that different vehicle is what enables you to drive to $1 million rather than walking to 100,000.
And I think that through my journey, initially, when you're an entrepreneur that hasn't started a business yet, raised money for the first time, or whatever it might be in the entrepreneur world, you are concerned about very strategic, tactical things that are slowing you down. That's the analysis paralysis side. Whereas you just need to take action and go and work through the mindset shifts to allow you to take off. Throughout your journey, all of a sudden you go back to when you were just getting started. And I went through a journey this entire year that I needed a very high-level tactical business coach to get me to the next strategy. Well, I wasted the entire year. All it came down to was mindset shifts that, again, I need to get out of my way. I need to grow my team, and I need to become a better leader of people. And my people will help us get to that next level. Period. So it all comes down to mindset shifts no matter what level you are at in your journey.
That is regularly one of the hardest things for me to work through because I'm so willing to jump in the trenches. I love the work. Like, I'm a masochist when it comes to work. Like, I love the grind, the pain, the suffering to get to where I'm trying to go. And what I found is that's very beneficial for jump starting your career or starting a business because you're just in the trenches grinding. It's very difficult once you get to that next level where I will super quickly jump in the trenches with my teammates when I should be standing outside of things and organizing and planning. And so now the work is much more focused on how do I align everyone to a common vision? How do I get them to clearly understand what we're going for and how to get there? How do I clearly define what the steps look like so that I can make sure that all these people who are operating in different functions, they're aware of each other's functions and what those requirements are. And so I have to invest so much time in just building out a clear roadmap and articulate goals and KPIs for each person to work towards and making sure that they're aligned. And it's so difficult for me to not just immediately dive into the trenches and do work with them. So
what I heard is that you were very similar to me. You like being in the trenches. You like being in the field. You like being the doer. As you start to level up, it becomes the mindset shift. And the thing that I've been thinking about and stressing with my team is there's the blue collar mindset versus the white collar mindset. And that's physical and mental. And so I need to go and I need to stay in the blue collar mindset. However, I need to do that by becoming a white collar leader, right? And so our entire company from 0 to 80 million was built because of the blue collar physical side of what I was doing. I need to keep the same mindset and drill that into my team because obviously it's working. So if my team continue to do those things, and if I put the right people in the right seats and the mindset shift goes from me into them, they become a mini me, then all of a sudden we get to our next goal of 250 million.
Yeah. So walk us through what that first deal that you ended up purchasing, raising capital and taking down looked like.
So my very first deal, my wife and I bought a $170,000 house that we were going to live in for 2 years, fix it up, keep it as a rental. Our entire goal in life originally was to own 3 single family homes that would go to our kids to pay for their college, period. Well, the mindset shift kicked in. I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. I read a couple other books. So my very first investment was a $1.5 million storage facility. And I was able to create that opportunity because I was a hustler. I was a property manager for other people. So when the opportunity presented itself and it crossed my desk, the individual that I was hired by to manage his multifamily portfolio, he had reached out to me because the same channel where the lead came across my desk also crossed his. He reached out to me and said, Ben, you've made me a lot of money. You've done a great job being my property manager. Would you be interested in partnering with me to take this deal down because it's bigger than anything I've ever done? And I know that you want to get into this. What are your thoughts? We had already dated in a business relationship where he was the owner, I was the manager for multiple years. So we worked well together in a business fashion. So we reviewed the numbers together, and I leaned a lot on him because I didn't know how to underwrite as well as he did. So we leaned on each other. He asked me to learn how to run a storage business because he had zero idea how. And within 24 hours, we worked through it and we went under contract. And in less than 45 days later, we had closed. My sole job was to figure out how to run the operations. His sole job was to figure out the bank, and the rest was history. And that relationship grew from 2018 through 2020, where we acquired 4 total storage facilities, one with bank financing, the others with creative financing. And that portfolio today we bought for a total of less than $6 million, and it's worth over 12 today.
Awesome.
That's how we got started. And then all of a sudden, confidence happens. And then I start becoming the person who is sourcing deals, underwriting deals, negotiating with insurance and banks. And then I start replacing myself in the operational side, where I was once the hustle, and now I start to move into the different seat.
Yeah. Hey, quick pause here. If you're getting value from these conversations, it would mean the world to me if you took 10 seconds right now to leave a 5-star review. Each review directly helps us reach more people who can benefit from these incredible conversations. And if you're looking to buy a hotel or invest in one of our deals, or even if you just want to say, hey, you can send us an email at hello@thehuntforincredible.com. We'd love to hear from you. Now back to the show. Every single person I know who's gotten into commercial real estate got into the space with a partner who had done it before. I don't know a single other person who did it successfully. I actually have one friend who he sold an e-commerce business, made about $3.5 million off of it, thought that hospitality would be a fun thing to do. So he got into it himself. And he said that 3 years that he was in the space was the most stressful 3 years of his entire life. And he's convinced it shaved a decade off of his life because he was figuring everything out on his own. The fastest way to get to where you're trying to go is to find someone who's done the thing that you're trying to do. And you find that person by entering rooms where people's reality is your dream. And then via osmosis, you learn how to operate the way they operate. And you build rapport with them so that you can bring them in on deals that you find the gaps that they have. One of my favorite ways to do it is what I call the mentor flywheel. So the mentor flywheel is effectively how I ended up getting into hospitality. The way that I did it is I found a group with a high concentration of people who had done the thing that I was trying to do. Before this, I didn't even know anybody who worked at a hotel, let alone owned one. But I joined a group where there was a high concentration of people who owned hotels. So for them, buying a hotel was the way I would go and buy a sandwich. You know, it was just like, oh yeah, you just go and you find a hotel and then you buy it. Like it was nothing. To me, it seemed like this massive mountain. To them, it was a molehill. So I found the people who my dream was their reality. And I asked them 2 questions. Number 1 is, what is your goal? Number 2 is, what's the biggest challenge to getting to your goal? So I ended up building up basically a portfolio of mentors and would ask them regularly, what are your goals? And they would say, oh, we're trying to scale our portfolio. And then I'd say, okay, what's your biggest challenge? And they'd say deal flow. So what my partners and I would do is we would go hunt for deals and we would bring them back. And this one mentor who we ended up bringing on in particular, he would give us feedback and say things like, oh, that has a restaurant. I don't buy hotels with restaurants. So he'd say, I don't buy hotels with restaurants. We'd say, cool. So we'd add that to the list. We'd go out, hunt for more deals. We'd bring another one back and he'd say, I only buy deals that have a minimum of an 18% internal rate of return. We'd say, cool. So we add 18% minimum IRR on the list. And we continue the cycle. And over the process, we had built an incredible relationship with him. We had built rapport with him. So he grew to trust us and our work ethic. And we were learning in the space, all without asking him, like, where can I work for you? I'm willing to work for free. Like nobody is willing to do that who's at a high level because it costs them more time and energy to get you ramped up. Even if you're offering to work for them for free, it's not free for them. Like it's not worth their time. So by identifying what their goals are and what their challenges are, you're able to expedite that. And eventually my partners and I, we found a deal that we brought back that fit his criteria. And so he said, yeah, this looks like a great deal. And we said, you want to partner on it? And he said, yeah, sure. So he ended up coming in on it with us, and the rest is history. Now we're invested across 7 hotels. We're operating one. We have one more in the pipeline that we're hoping to take down. Hopefully by the end of the year would be great. But yeah, I mean, exactly like you said, like finding somebody who's done the thing that you're trying to do and go in on it with them, because commercial real estate, it's such a big pie. There's so many things to do that there's no reason, and it's super high risk and high effort to try to figure out all the components yourself. There's just not enough time in the day. When you're dealing with millions of dollars, it's not worth it. Just finding someone who's done it, convincing them to be on your team and dive into it is 100% the best way to do it.
Well, I think for anybody that's listening that is looking for a mentor, a business partner, or to get started at a bigger level than just buying a single family house, should rewind that, take notes, because I think that is the perfect roadmap and playbook to find business partners where you can take things to a higher level very, very quickly. I think something that I've paid attention to that resonated a lot with what you just said was that don't recreate the wheel. Anything in business for the most part and anything in real estate has been done before. So go find someone who has had success, interview them, learn about them, read about them, listen to every single podcast they've been on, take notes. Do the same thing with the next person, and then morph your own business together based off people that have had success. Like, so for example, like I literally just got a new management contract for our business, and I called my operations manager, Carly, who we both know. And I said, Carly, I'm going to give you $10,000 to implement. It can be a bonus to yourself. You can hire your own VA. We can go get a new system, whatever it takes. How can we make your life easier? And she thought about it. And she came back to me and says, all right, in this next version of Legacy Investment Group 2.0, we are racing to $250 million of AUM. Who are we modeling after, and who do we want to become? Let's take that $10,000, put ourselves on a plane, and go meet with them for a couple days and say, we're going to pay you $10,000 to teach us, implement your systems so we can copy you because we respect you and want to become you. And I was like, damn, that is a great answer from somebody on my team. Let's make that happen. And so that goes exactly back to when I was getting started of being a real estate agent. I picked to be at RE/MAX because in my market, RE/MAX dominated the market. And when I walked around the office, I asked my office manager, who are the biggest hitters that are doing the most sales in the most expensive houses? And I wanted my office to be next to them so I could sit there and do nothing but listen and learn and copy them. We take that exact same model and do it today. And now, fortunately, my team is starting to pay attention to that too. And that gives me a lot of encouragement that we will achieve our goal faster than we want.
Yeah. 100%, 100%. There's no use in going through the pain and suffering of trying to figure it out on your own. I have a buddy who calls it the stupid tax. He says anytime you do something for the first time, you pay a stupid tax. And what we're going for in real estate specifically is we're looking for those asymmetric returns where you reduce the downside risk and you increase the upside reward. And the single best way to do that is by adopting the skill set and expertise of another person that you can bring onto your team. So I love what you said about finding someone who's done the thing. Something else that I want to point out about that mentality is from another mentor that I had, where I was chatting with him about my real estate portfolio at the time. And I said, this is the portfolio I have, and this is how I plan to leverage it to scale up the portfolio. And he looked at me and he said, don't tell me what you have and what you're going to do with it. Tell me where you want to go and what you need to get there. And that changed everything for me, because I went from looking at my single family resident portfolio over to how do I buy commercial assets and scale a commercial asset portfolio? Because if I had simply focused on my single family homes and then scaled those up, it would have looked completely different than making a beeline for commercial real estate and saying, I'm going to buy a hotel. How do I find people who have bought hotels before and then re-engineer it backwards from there? Because you can cut so many corners to where even if you have to give that expert additional equity, or like in your case, like you're mentioning, pay them $10,000, the ROI on that investment is massive when you cut out the time it takes to get there, when you accelerate how quickly you can move, because having an expert on your team makes everything easier. It makes raising capital easier. Banks are more interested in giving you better terms on your debt. It makes operations smoother. You sleep better at night. Everything goes smoother. That $10,000 or a chunk of equity in your first deal pales in comparison to the cost of owning the whole thing, but going through the pain and suffering and potentially losing your shirt in the process.
And I think, you can play small, and that's mentally or physically, right? And I think ultimately, if you're on the fence, you need to get started. And if it's more comfortable for you to get started to buy a single family home because you're only guaranteeing $200,000 of debt opposed to $2 million of debt, that is a mindset hurdle to get over. And it's a confidence thing to ensure you're implementing things correctly. Now, if you have a team with you or you have a stable of investors that are investing alongside you, there's a whole lot of other mindset work that goes into that. And I think ultimately, as soon as you start to prove yourself, a lot of mental work comes with confidence. Confidence comes where you get success. And so if you slowly start getting success stories, it gives you more confidence to keep asking the questions that you're alluding to from the mentors that you want to become. And so ultimately, the other way that I think about it is at our company, we're obviously not Warren Buffett. We don't invest like Warren Buffett, but I respect the hell out of what he built. And so does almost everybody on earth that likes investing, right? And so ultimately, I think of knowledge like my investments, where I want it to compound and compound and compound. And every single week, every single day, every single month, every single year, I continue to get more and more knowledge, which gives me more confidence, which in return, all of a sudden, my portfolio is bigger as well.
Yeah. So now let's shift over into once you began driving the capital side of the deals. What did capital raising look like for you in terms of those first few deals?
Literally had a meeting about this morning at our L10 meeting about sourcing capital and where we go in the future. Ultimately, we started incredibly small on a couple smaller JV deals with my original business partner, where he got to a stage in his life where he had more than everything he wanted. And he says, Ben, I'm happy. I know you want to keep growing. I'm going to let you spread your wings. If you find another partner, keep going. Like, go do it, man. And so I did find another partner who is now my partner at Legacy Investment Group. And when we started that, again, we just did it ourselves. And all of a sudden, we didn't have the big vision that we did today and that we do today. Ultimately, what happened is it is literally friends and family seeing what we're doing, seeing that we have more freedom to travel the world, seeing that I'm weirdly having to leave dinner to go let someone into a storage unit or to go show an apartment. Then they start asking questions, right? So we did a good job of letting other people know slightly what we're doing without being on social media, people getting curious in us. Ultimately, they wanted what we had started building. So it was literally friends and family. The very first deal that we ever raised money on, we got from 8 investors. And we bought a property in Kansas. Our office is based in Minnesota. So it was an out-of-state investment. We raised money from 8 individuals that were very, very close to us. We had gone into that thinking it was going to be one of the hardest ventures we ever did, because obviously we take raising money and managing people's money very, very seriously. Friends and family want what we had. And then so all of a sudden we do the next deal and we're terrified because we have to raise an extra $500,000. Well, all we do is reach out to our original 8, and all of a sudden they refer us to their sister or their friend, and then it just continues to build. Over time, all we did was really lean into our original investor base, which became cheerleaders for us and referral partners. So that original 8 investors has now turned into about 80 investors by the end of this year. That was all through referral-based, word of mouth. And fortunately, we have had a good track record. So we do what we say. We say we're going to have a target return with a likelihood of achieving our upside if X, Y, and Z happens. And we did it. And so we've been able to navigate COVID. We've been able to navigate the economy. And so we have not had to reinvent the wheel and go crazy on social media, running Facebook ads and doing huge keynotes all around the world to raise money. We've just really leaned into doing what we say and asking our investor pool for referrals. Now, to go from 80 million to 250 million, this is a big mindset shift because our goal is to raise $50 million over the next 2 years. That's a much different world of a check size and investor base in order to do that. So we're currently road mapping a plan as to what that's going to look like. And one of my business partners said, Ben, are we overthinking this? Like, can we just double down on our cheerleaders that we have today and just ask for more referrals? What would that look like if we get 2 referrals from everybody? You start doing the math quickly, all of a sudden we start to get there a lot easier than we think.
Yeah. So what was the consensus or the conclusion?
So the conclusion is that ultimately, if you can go from an average check size from an investor of $50,000 to $75,000, that's a big jump of itself. If we have 80 investors that give us two extra investors, 80 turns into about 300 investors very, very quickly, and we're almost at 50 million a year in equity raised just from that pool of people. Ultimately, we would like to start working with some family offices. We have built a portfolio through self-storage, multifamily, and triple net retail that has produced a track record of the return profile plus refinances and return of investor capital that is attractive to some family offices right now. So that is a path that we're starting to explore in 2026.
Nice. That's exciting. That's exciting. So how long are those deal cycles? So you mentioned you raised capital, you did what you said you were going to do, and then they shared it with their friends and family, etc. How long was that cycle?
So initially, every single deal we've done to date is an individual syndication. So if you want to invest $100,000, you know exactly what you are investing in. And throughout this whole period of time, we've been a 501(b) registered with the SEC. We don't need to get too complex there, but that's who we have been. And so our typical deals, our company name is Legacy Investment Group. Our entire brand is Legacy. So any entity we have, any spin-off business we have is Legacy something. The idea behind that originally was, again, the Warren Buffett approach of buy and never sell. So we wanted to create legacy investments. So we only buy in very, very solid markets. We buy quality assets that we would want to hold for a lifetime or longer. So that is the base of our investment thesis. So anytime we go work with an investor, right? You just mentioned you have a 1-month-old. I'm about to have my first kid. I don't know what life's ultimately going to be like in 5 years, let alone 50 years. So we needed to change our mindset shift a little bit, especially working with investors, because yes, your intent might be mine, but we don't know what's going to happen when your kids go to college. So ultimately, we like to tell our investors that every single investment opportunity has a lifespan of somewhere between 5 to 10 years, and we will continue to reevaluate at the time a refinance opportunity is coming up. And ultimately, if it's performing extremely well where we can continue to do cash out refinances, the likelihood of us holding those assets is very, very strong. However, if a market cycle is there and timing is right, we will entertain the idea of an exit. Now, the key with that is we never try to time anything, but there are strategic times in the economy where it might make sense to sell. And that is a new mindset shift that a couple of mentors have made to me, is that you need to be open to selling certain assets to level up even further to unlock and recycle capital.
What have you found is the ideal avatar to raise capital from? Like, are there any avatars that you are more interested in raising capital from, and also the alternative of less interested in raising capital from?
That's a really good question. I think all the investors that we work with so far to date are very, very similarly aligned in their outlook as to why they're investing. So if you reach out to me and say, hey, Ben, I'm interested in your opportunity in Colorado, I'd love to schedule a meeting to learn more about it. My very first question to you is, why do you have interest in potentially investing in this opportunity? Second question is followed by, have you ever invested in real estate before? I ultimately want to know what your expectations are, because if we go from a dating cycle of having the question and conversation around investing in this particular opportunity, the second we close on it and you wire the money and sign our operating agreement, we are now married for 5 to 10 years. So if your expectations as to what our business plan is, what our return structure is from call it from your expectation as monthly, however we pay distributions on a quarterly basis, there's misalignment. So ultimately what I'm trying to do through the conversation is we don't say yes to everybody who wants to invest with us, because just like my alignment with my partner to build our business, I want to make sure you and I are also aligned on the expectations of each individual investment. So that way we can move a lot faster to the opportunity. We can implement the business plan. We can promise, we don't promise anything. However, we want to implement and give the opportunity for the return profile that we had said. So ultimately, we do not have an overall avatar, but we look for people who are aligned around our business model.
That's awesome. You've invested in multiple different asset classes, short-term rentals, or no, it was the self-storage, multifamily, triple net leases. Is there an asset class that you're hyper focused on moving forward, or are you still just depending on the opportunity and the different asset classes diving in?
Short answer is it depends on the opportunity. The longer answer is that yes, we are in three asset classes, which typically as you get bigger, people niche down onto one so they can be hyper focused. My background and my partner's background, we had the opportunity to be exposed to all three asset classes in various fashions. So for me, I got to be a broker and sell all three, which means I got exposure to how to acquire, how to kick up rocks to find off market opportunities, right? From there, I got to learn how capital stacks are formed through lending relationships to get deals closed. After that, I got to manage all three of those asset classes. So I had the opportunity over a period of time to get exposure to all of them. And I really, really believe in a diverse portfolio, right? Like, unfortunately, throughout COVID, office space got absolutely pounded. And if your sole focus was office space, you're still not doing good today around most parts of the country. That would kill me if I had all my eggs in my basket, because the chief metric that my wife and I have before we do anything is if we say yes, if we invest in this opportunity, can we sleep well at night? And so by having a diverse portfolio, we can weather storms. And so to answer your question a little bit further, multifamily has been very, very tight the last few years all around the country. Self storage has tightened up because it was the sexiest asset class for about a 4 year period of time. And so everything comes in cycles. So because we have the background, the knowledge, and the operational skill set in three asset classes, it gives us the ability to add and grow our portfolio over time based off the opportunity is there. And so ultimately, we are not forced to buy things to keep our lights on. I think that is the worst thing somebody can do is have the acquisition mindset where they need to be forced to buy to take on fees or management fees to keep their team there. Well, I know a couple really good buddies that haven't bought a deal in 3 years. A, that's really hard to keep a team motivated. But B, if you're not taking fees, you got to let your team go. So how do you work back from that when the economy changes? You don't have a team anymore.
Yeah, that's a big reason why we ultimately decided not to raise a fund, because we were entertaining the idea of, and so we have done straight syndications in the past, like you were saying, like where for everybody listening, you find a deal and then you raise capital for that specific deal. Whereas a fund, you're raising capital for a deal type and you let the investors know, I'm going to look for deals that fit this criteria. And then you raise the capital, then you go buy multiple deals. And the reason why we ultimately didn't go with it is because when you're raising capital, the clock starts to hit those returns, because the second that check hits your bank account from your investor, the clock starts of needing to yield a return. And I know people who have raised funds and they've ended up buying deals that were subpar just because they had to move the cash. And I never want to be in that position where I have to do anything. Like you, I want to buy an asset where we underwrite it to saying, okay, we project that we're going to hold the deal for 5 to 7 years, but we always run the numbers to make sure that we could run it indefinitely in markets that we feel are going to continue to grow at an appropriate rate with strong fundamentals into the foreseeable future, because I never want to get stuck. That's how a lot of really smart investors find themselves in really tough situations, is A, they're over leveraged, or B, they find themselves in a deal that they have to get rid of when they shouldn't be getting rid of it at that time.
Yeah, that's one of the things that keeps you up at night. And I think a lot of that is discipline. And this goes all the way back to the beginning of our conversation, is like willingness to learn, willingness to roll up your sleeves, willingness to try something, but also the discipline to stay focused and see something through. Right? Like I remember back to the day when I was mowing lawns, riding around to Bigger Pockets 10, 15 years ago before I ever got started. And the question at the end is, I can't remember it word for word anymore, but it's like, what's the biggest thing holding people back from getting started? Like, I can't remember, but like anyone who listened to Bigger Pockets 15 years ago remembers that. And ultimately, to me, it's curiosity followed by the discipline to see that through, to take action, to get the confidence to keep going, and then the domino starts. So if you take that back to when I started as a real estate agent, everyone says a real estate agent says you might not get your first commission check for about 6 months, and ultimately you might not start getting regular commissions for about a year. Well, what happens 3 months into my career as a real estate agent if I never get a check? All of a sudden I give up. Then I go chase the next shiny thing that people are talking about on podcasts or you see on social media, and you never start to get traction. So being disciplined enough to see things through, to let the snowball start taking off, is the biggest key, in my opinion, to people wanting to level up both their mindset, their life, and their portfolio.
Yeah, I love it. Ben, at the Hunt for Incredible, we believe that questions are the answer. So what question do you feel people need to ask themselves to be successful in the space?
Why? Why do you want what you are starting to go down the road to figure out, to implement into your life, to change what you might not be happy about, what you want to change in your future, what you want your future self to look like? And specifically with that, every single quarter, my wife and I sit down and we say, why are we doing this? What are we looking forward to in future? And why do we want that in our future? And then we design our entire business around that. So I think you need to start by being the best version of yourself, because that gives you the energy to become the best entrepreneur, and your why behind what drives you, I think, is very, very.
I love it. Ben, where can people find you?
Best place to find me is you can go to our website, legacyinvestmentgroup.com. Our contact page is monitored both by myself and my team. That's the best place. You can also follow me on Instagram, Ben_Kall, Kall.
Awesome. Ben, thanks for being on the show, bro.
Absolutely. Appreciate it.